See right here is a class that's inheriting from another class, the actual React component class. And that's how we actually render out our component. Now you might be tempted to write some code in your own class and then inherit from that. In other words, do something like class my new wrapper extends parent wrapper. And do that. Now, it probably will work, but it's definitely not recommended because of a lot of reasons. One of them being that you start to make your code a lot more confusing this way. Keeping it as a component will make things a lot easier for you in the long run. So what we're going to do instead is I'm going to show you how to do what React calls composition. So that is being able to reuse this code. A lot of this is coming straight from the docs, but it's still important to see how it works and just understand a little bit better on all this. Now, first and foremost, this component is not very good. We can actually change it into something more like a function, right? So we can actually use a function and just say, let's call it parent wrapper still, and have it pass in props by default and return the exact same thing, right? So I'm going to comment out this other class, save that, and what do you know? Still coming through, right? So it's the exact same thing. I still have that parent wrapper in the app. That's it. So this function it's pretty static, right? So if I want to add the abilities that this component has, I could do that. But what I want to do instead is I want to make this my alert box. Right? So alert boxes you'll see fairly often. So I'm just going to call this the alert box. And I'll have that as my default export. Save it. I did not save anything or change anything in app.js. So I refresh in here, it's still working. Now you might be familiar with this, maybe not. But when you do export default in the latest version of JavaScript ES6, it will export that whatever. You can only have one default export per thing. So you don't actually have to name it the exact same thing. But this alert box, what we want it to do is I actually want this to have some sort of class that's related to the props that are being passed to this. In other words, I want to have a div class in here. And I want to actually have my content, so I want to fill this in with something. We'll see what that is in a second. But then I want to use the props to actually handle whatever this class name would be. Right? So if I had this, it would be, in my case, I'm going to use just the standard bootstrap, that front-end library. So alert, and let's say alert and dash, right? And then I'll just add props dot whatever prop that I want to give it. So I'll just call it alert type. Let's use camel case. Okay, so this will allow me to actually put in something inside of this alert. Now, if I save it as it is now, it says fill in with something, right? Well, I actually do want to fill it in with something. So let's add the ability to change this by using child elements that you can use in whether it's a function or a class. Something you may have not seen before. But like, how do I change what this is based off of something else? In other words, how do I make, welcome here dialog do roughly the same thing, but use that alert box? So I'm going to go ahead and return. I want to actually use the alert box itself. So alert box, and then close off alert box. So this welcome here dialog is now what the app is going to be called. Again, not changing the imports at all. Not yet, at least. So we've got our welcome here dialog. Refresh. It's still rendering the same thing, right? And it actually, with standard JS and the syntax linter that I have, it does change it to this. So I actually want to put some content in this. And I'll just say some new content. And we'll close off that alert box. And you know what? Let's give it an H1 in here. And while we're at it, we have our alert box and we have some props here. Let's go ahead and add an alert type. So alert type being success. So we save that. I refresh in here, and it still says fill this in with something. But now, if I inspect the element and take a look, I see that it says alert-success, right? And of course, that's coming from the prop itself, so props is working. Now again, you could do this same thing with the component itself, right? It's actually not a whole lot different here. You would just be calling the component like that, and then using props. And let's actually just do it. So I'll just go in here and say const alert type equals to this.props. Right? So now parent wrapper and alert box are doing roughly the same thing. So let's just keep that going. We'll actually show you both things. I mean, it's not a whole lot different anyway, but how do we actually change the content that's coming through here based off of the content that we have as considered contained in this element? Well, this is a child component of the property. So all I do here is props.child, or children rather. And again, oh, sorry, this is in the wrapper, so we would say const children equals to this.props. You could do something like that, or really it'd be this.props.children. That's more likely how you would write it. And then here it is just simply props.children, because that's the method that's going to be passed by default to functions that are used in this manner as a component. Okay, so there we go. That actually renders it out, and now we have a alert box that I can use in other places. Right, so I can actually import this alert box somewhere else, right? So if I wanted to, I would come in here and want to import the alert box. So that's where I just do export alert box, right? So I have the welcome here dialog is coming in by default. So let's make sure our imports are looking good. So welcome here dialog. I'm going to comment out this parent wrapper. We don't need that anymore. Again, you can test that out if you wanted. But now let's go ahead and try our alert box out in app.js, just like we did before. And this time it's we called it alert type. I'll just say danger. And I think this is working. ... Close off that alert box. We save it. And we come back in here. I think this is working. ... I go and inspect this element here. And what do we've got? We've got danger, success, and what do you know? It's actually rendering it the way you might think. And this is how you can reuse that, right? So that actual piece I can now reuse anywhere. And of course, with all this, I can still use a class component, you know, something like this, and have it rendered in here as well. So let's just say sub item, and you know, do this exact same thing, right? Like that's not probably not that's shocking here. But that's where you would actually move these things out and have it where if you have functions or methods that you want to reuse over and over again, this would be a really good way to do that. Now, of course, it doesn't have to be done exactly like this. It's kind of up to you. But the idea here is that you have these components that you build and you can share them across other ones, right? So these functions here can be shared against other code, and that's just how you do it. You want to make sure you're exporting it much like I have here. You can only do one default export like I have. And with multiple exports, you can do it, I mean, much like I just did. So sub item, alert box, sub item, just like that. And then that way we could import those things elsewhere like that. Pretty cool, huh? Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to get everything. I'm going to be covering a lot more stuff on React here and in the future. I think this piece is pretty cool, and it'll help speed up, you know, not rewriting everything that you need to do over and over again in your projects. And also the main thing here is understanding that we shouldn't be doing our own custom class components or overriding that custom class component. Instead, just go ahead and make individual functions that do things like this. And of course, these could be their own components themselves, but this is a really nice, clean, and easy way to do that for a variety